Hare Krishna Krishna Vishnu Bhagavatam Swami Namaste Saraswati Devi Bhagavan Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Gaur Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jai Vishnupad Paramahansa Privrajagacharya Alstotra Sata Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Privrajagacharya Alstotra Sata Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnav Brindi Ki Jai. Nama Acharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shyamakund Radhakund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Navadip Mayapur Dham Ki Jai. Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Ganga Mai Ki Jai. Jamuna Mai Ki Jai. Tulasi Devi Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Gaura Premanande.
Thank you so much, Panchatattva Prabhu, and welcome to all for Srimad Bhagavatam class with His Holiness Jayadvaita Swami and friends. It is Monday, November 13th, 2023, which in the western part of the world is Govardhan Puja, and we are reading in Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd canto, 25th chapter. It looks from my notes that we ended with text 41 last time. Is that what you all have as well? I have 41 in my chat notes.
Yes, that's what I have pulled up.
Okay, good. So then starting tonight with text number 42. And thank you all for being here. Hare Krishna.
I guess I'll start off the read. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Madhvayad Vati Vatoyam. Suryastapati Madhvayat. Rishatindra Dahat Yagnir. Mrityus Charity Madhvayat. It is because of my supremacy that the wind blows out of fear of me. The sun shines out of fear of me. And the Lord of the clouds, Indra, sends forth showers out of fear of me. Fire burns out of fear of me, and death goes about taking its toll out of fear of me. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, says in Bhagavad Gita that the natural laws being enacted are correct in all activities because of his superintendence. No one should think that nature is working automatically without superintendence. The Vedic literature says that the clouds are controlled by the demigod Indra. Heat is distributed by the sun god. The soothing moonlight is distributed by Chandra. And the air is blowing under the arrangement of the demigod Vayu. But above all these demigods, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the chief living entity. Nitya Nityanam Chaitanas Chaitananam. The demigods are also ordinary living entities, but due to their faithfulness, their devotional service attitude, they have been promoted to such posts. These different demigods or directors, such as Chandra, Varuna, and Vayu, are called Adhikari Devata. The demigods are departmental heads. The government of the Supreme Lord consists not only of one planet or two or three. There are millions of planets and millions of universes. The Supreme Personality of Godhead has a huge government, and he requires assistance. The demigods are considered his bodily limbs. These are the descriptions of Vedic literature. Under these circumstances, the sun god, the moon god, the fire god, and the air god are working under the direction of the Supreme Lord. It is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita, Mayadhyakshena Prakriti Suyate Sacharacharam. The natural laws are being conducted under his superintendence. Because he is in the background, everything is being performed punctually and regularly. One who has taken shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is completely protected from all other influences. He no longer serves or is obliged to anyone else. Of course, he is not disobedient to anyone, but his full power of thought is absorbed in the service of the Lord. The statements by the Supreme Personality of Godhead Kapila that under his direction the air is blowing, the fire is burning, and the sun is giving heat are not sentimental. The impersonalist may say that the Bhagavatam devotees create and imagine someone as the Supreme Personality of Godhead and assign qualifications to him. But actually, it is neither imagination nor an imposition of artificial power in the name of Godhead. In the Vedas, it is said, Bishasmad Vataha Pavate, Bishodeti Suryaha. By fear of the Supreme Lord, the wind god and the sun god are acting. Bishasmad Agnis Chindrascha Mrityur Davati Pankchamaha. Agni, Indra, and Mrityu are also acting under his direction. Unquote. These are the statements of the Vedas. Om Jnana-timiranda Shaganandana Salakaya Chakshumanitam Jnana Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So, a number of points here. Krishna's the supreme personality of Godhead. His supremacy isn't partial. It's not conditional. It's not challenged in any way. He's the supreme personality of Godhead. And by his arrangement in the millions of universes, and of those universes, the millions of planets thereof, there are departmental heads, as mentioned here, the demigods, who are described as, what is that Sanskrit? Adhikari Devata. They are departmental heads in the service of the Lord. Prabhupada says the government of the Supreme Lord consists not only of one planet or two or three. There are millions of planets and millions of universes. Within our local inspection, we can find someone who's in charge of a country, or someone who's struggling to get a number of countries to agree. And there may be one particular country that is considered the most powerful, and that country has a head of that particular region. But the relative power of such personalities pales to complete insignificance when compared to that of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Just as in this country, there's an administration, the leader or the president or whoever that personality in charge may be, he has his administration, and they're going about taking care of things throughout the country on his order or her order. And similarly, in the jurisdiction of the entire material creation, there's an executive head. That's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And the demigods, all the way up to Lord Brahma, are working under his direction. He's the maintainer of them all. He's the supreme cognizant of all conscious entities, and he's maintaining all living entities. Yeah. He's fulfilling the desires of all living entities. Right? Nityo nityanam chaitanas chaitananam eko viridhati. Ko bhavanam yo viridhati kaman. So that's Krishna's position. And Prabhupada emphasizes here, the natural laws are being conducted under his superintendence. He is in the background. Everything is being performed punctually. Because he is in the background, everything's being performed punctually and regularly. It's interesting that this word fear is applied here. Matbayat, a few times, 3 times. Matbayat. Out of fear of me, the wind blows. Out of fear of me, the sun shines. Out of fear of me, Indra sends forth showers. Even fire is burning, because these are all things that are happening ultimately under Krishna's authority. And Krishna's authority is, it can't be defied. If it's defied by a foolish, demoniac personality who has to suffer ultimately the consequences. Those consequences may not be meted out by the Supreme Lord directly. He has other agencies in the form of the material nature to mete out consequences for acting opposite the Lord's instructions. But they are meted out nonetheless. So there may be a fear factor there, just like in any country, there's a certain portion of the population that you have to show this, the government has to show the stick to. There has to be a threat. There has to be some apprehension on the part of persons who are lawless or in opposition. But here it's emphasized that the devotee is in a different position. Where is that? Yeah. One who has taken shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is completely protected from all other influences. He no longer serves or is obliged to anyone else. He's not disobedient to anyone, but his full power of thought is absorbed in the service of the Lord. That personality, who's 100% surrendered to the personality of Godhead, his only business is serving Krishna. And this is not a fearful position. We read throughout the Srimad Bhagavatam, throughout the Vedic literatures of personalities who are totally surrendered to the Lord. And there's not fear, there's love, there's affection. And, there are different rasas or humors that those devotees are engaged with the Supreme Lord in. So that's the difference. One position, what was that example is given is that of the cat, when the cat captures a mouse in its mouth, the mouse is in fear. But when the cat picks up its kitten, the kitten feels safe, protected. So that's a rough analogy, but there it is. Krishna's relationship with his devotee is a little different, quite a bit different from the relationship of an antagonistic or atheistic person and the Lord, or a person in the mood of disregarding the Lord or competing with the Lord. And Prabhupada finishes up this purport disparaging the impersonalist idea, which is that this impersonalist looks at the devotees and says, you are just making this all up. You're misinterpreting the Vedic literature to say that there's a supreme personality of Godhead, and you're attributing, mundane qualities to the Lord. The impersonalist may say that the Bhagavatam devotees create and imagine someone as the supreme personality of Godhead and assign qualifications to him. But Prabhupada says this is not at all the fact. And then he quotes from the Vedic literatures to assert that the Supreme Lord is the supreme controller. He is an independent entity, and he is acting in such a way that all the demigods are obligingly following his instructions. Isa asmad agnischendrascha mrityu davati panchamaha. Indra, Agni, and Mrityu are also acting under his direction. These are the statements of the Vedas. So basically, Prabhupada saying, you're claiming the authority of the Vedas. Impersonalists also study the Vedas. And yet you're defying the statements of the Vedas. It's said very clearly right here. These are the statements of the Vedas. Hare Krishna. So there's some comment by Akendra Prabhu. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti commentary on this verse, quote, you have just said the devotees worship you without worshiping others. Will the devatas not being worshipped become angry and give suffering to your devotees sometimes? The Lord answers with pride. Something's in the way. Okay. Oh, anyway. The devotees answer with pride. Oh boy. The Shruti also says that the wind blows out of fear of the Lord, the sun rises in fear, and Agni and Indra move, and death flees out of fear of the Lord. If they sometimes harass my devotees, I do not delay in removing them from their positions. End quote. And then Akendra Prabhu says, I appreciated this statement, quote, the Supreme Personality of Godhead has a huge government and he requires assistance. The demigods are considered his bodily limbs, unquote. When a devotee asked Srila Prabhupada, if Krishna is all-powerful, why does he need demigods to run a universe? Srila Prabhupada replied, you don't know how to run a universe.
This verse seems especially appropriate considering today being Govardhan Puja and the whole history of that, with Indra expecting his worship and not getting it.
He ended up in a very fearful condition, submitting before the Supreme Personality of God, who appeared before him as a small cowherd boy. Nice point.
Even Indra, it seems, even Indra, he, what's the word? Misjudges. He misjudges Krishna.
Even Lord Brahma. That's, I guess, could be qualified to a large degree as pastimes of the Lord, but still, they're to their credit. Once they recognize their mistake, they submit. They compose beautiful prayers. Indra has the Surabhikau Beda Krishna. So there's, I guess that's the difference. Hiranyakashipu wouldn't submit. Ravana wouldn't submit. Defiant to the end. The demigod his intelligence may be covered at some moment, but then he comes to realize, oh, what have I done? Oh, I better hasten to offer my heartfelt regrets and obeisances and think of some service by which I can pacify the Lord.
Meanwhile, the stubbornly bewildered, conditioned entities, like that one BBT painting of those old men with twisted faces, meant to illustrate the Avajananti Mam Mudha verse, that fools deride me. People like that populating this planet, they hear statements like, there are millions of planets, millions of universes, and go, ah. Hare Krishna.
Yeah, there's a lot of them to go about, but they'll dig into a few details or particulars that don't agree with their tiny view of the universe. But meanwhile, they'll miss the main points. You're not the body, your spirit, soul. You're part and parcel of the Supreme. They'll miss all of that, and poke at one little thing or that little thing. I read some transcript. Prabhupada's talking about the universe, and he's saying that there's one sun, and all the so-called stars, they're just reflecting the light of the sun. That would drive a materialistic scientist completely out of his mind. But there it is. That's, Prabhupada is saying it on the authority of the Vedas. So there's one sun. But that, to me, although it's the authority of the Vedas and cannot be countermanded, that's maybe a side point when you consider in terms of what is essential to understanding that you're not the body, you're the soul, you're the servant of Krishna. You're not the center of the universe. Your function is as a servant, and you've misapplied your service propensity to everyone but the source of everything. You want to read the next one?
I can read it.
Shall we go to the next one?
Sure.
Next verse. Yogananda, you want to read?
Sure. Yeah, to do that. Okay. Jnana Vairagya Yuktena Bhakti Yogena Yogena Ishmaya Paramolame Pravashanti Akutabhayam. Translation.
Speak up a little.
Translation. The yogis, equipped with transcendental knowledge and renunciation and engaged in devotional service for their eternal benefit, take shelter of my lotus feet. And since I am the Lord, they are thus eligible to enter into the kingdom of Godhead without fear. Purport. One who actually wants to be liberated from the entanglement of this material world and go back home, back to Godhead, is actually a mystic yogi. The words explicitly used here are Yuktena Bhakti Yogena. Those yogis or mystics who engage in devotional service are the first-class yogis. The first-class yogis are described in Bhagavad Gita are those who are constantly thinking of the Lord, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. These yogis are not without knowledge and renunciation. To become a bhakti yogi means to automatically attain knowledge and renunciation. That is the consequent result of bhakti yoga. In the Bhagavatam, first canto, second chapter, it is also confirmed that one who engages in the devotional service of Vasudeva, Krishna, has complete transcendental knowledge and renunciation, and there is no explanation of these attainments. Ahaituki, without reason, they come. Even if a person is completely illiterate, the transcendental knowledge of the scriptures is revealed unto him simply because of his engagement in devotional service. That is also stated in the Vedic literature. To anyone who has full faith in the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the spiritual master, all the import of the Vedic literatures is revealed. He does not have to seek separately. The yogi who engages in devotional service is full in knowledge and renunciation. If there is a lack of knowledge and renunciation, it is to be understood that one is not in full devotional service. The conclusion is that one cannot be sure of entrance into the spiritual realm, in either the impersonal Brahmajyoti effulgence of the Lord or the Vaikuntha planets within the Brahman effulgence, unless he surrendered unto the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord. The surrendered souls are called Akutobaya. They are doubtless and fearless, and their entrance into the spiritual kingdom is guaranteed. So I guess once again, Srila Prabhupada is emphasizing Bhakti Yoga. It doesn't matter what situation you're in or if you're illiterate, but practicing spiritual life with devotion is guaranteed to go back to the spiritual world. Anything else you'd like to add?
Nothing.
I thought this one statement was really interesting here. He says, if there is a lack of knowledge and renunciation, it is to be understood that one is not in full devotional service. So those are, you could say, symptomatic of someone who's in devotional service. You see knowledge, you see renunciation in that person. And if they're not there, they're not there.
Any other comment from someone else?
Another thing I thought was that the last sentence where he says, they, meaning the surrendered souls, are doubtless and fearless, and their entrance into the spiritual kingdom is guaranteed. Krishna tells Arjuna that you can know asangshayam samagram mam yatag yasyasi touch trinu. If you just hear from me, you'll know everything without doubt. You'll have the knowledge. And there's such an unbearably strong emphasis in contemporary society on wanting empiric proof for things, even though most people go through their life on faith of this and that. But this whole point of being doubtless and fearless, you just can't have that without this whole process of surrendering to Krishna, surrendering to Krishna's authorities in this world. You can't have doubtless and fearless knowledge. You're shooting in the dark, really.
Yeah. Sometimes when we see a devotee leaving their body, they're doubtless, which means they have firm faith in the process, and they're fearless. They're not afraid. We've seen that many times.
As I was focusing on this reference to uh, second chapter of the first canto of Bhagavatam, it's a well-known verse, Vasudevi Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojita Janayatiyashu Vairagyam Jnanam Chayad Ahaitukam. It's explained there that someone who fully engages in devotional service acquires automatically acquires knowledge and detachment from this world, which is really interesting because it's put this way actually with the word immediately acquires causeless knowledge and detachment from the world. And it's kind of and here Prabhupada's saying that there's without haituki, without reason they come. Even if a person is completely illiterate, the transcendental knowledge of the scriptures is revealed unto him simply because of his engagement in devotional service. It's pretty incredible. And I must say that in my own experience, I've known devotees who, it's something about my experience in the very large society of ISKCON, which may be small by comparison with other societies in this world, but you meet devotees whose faith is very strong, whose service is really strong, who's completely dedicated. They're not necessarily big scholars. They haven't memorized 1,000 verses or whatever, but they're so fixed up in their Krishna consciousness that it reminds me of that verse quite a bit. And then you'll see that they've been fixed up in their service for 25, 30, 35, 40 years. Not just one or two, or on and off. They've been, steadily engaged in devotional service, and I just have to fall on the ground at their feet because it's proof of the veracity of the statements of Srimad Bhagavatam.
Go ahead.
No, you first.
Okay, I have a little question here. And the first sentence, one who actually wants to be liberated from entanglement of this material world and go back home, back to God, is actually a mystic yogi. So we see so many great devotees. I'm wondering, it says mystic yogi. The word mystic for me, I think like power, superpower or something. So what is it really saying here? Mystic yogi?
If I could venture a suggestion, the beginning part of this purport just reminds me of 647, where yogi nama pi sarve sham, of all yogis, one who's really got it together. He's the one who's always worshiping me. He's the actual mystic yogi. But you're more concerned, it seems, with the word mystic. What does he mean by mystic here? Yeah.
Yes.
Maharaj says we have a concept that yogi means ashtasiddhi, etc. But here, yogi is redefined. The perfection of yoga, mysticism, is devotional service.
Mm-hmm. Also, I'm thinking of another place where Prabhupada says mystic means you don't know how it's done.
Yeah. And Maharaj says, as a Kendra, Prabhu quoted, yoginam api sarvesham.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Maharaj, could we take it that mystic yogi means a yogi who is on the transcendental path? Would transcendental necessarily qualify as a synonym for mystic? Maharaj says, why not?
Yeah. I was trying to remember earlier this the last line of the verse here. What is it? Pravishantyakuto bhayam. I was trying to remember where I've heard that before. And it's etan nirvidyamananam ichchitam akuto bhayam, where there's a list of personalities and like whether you want whether you're full of desires, whether you're a yogi, or whether you're a king, but the doubtless and fearless way of success is Sankirtan. That's how to achieve doubtlessness and fearlessness. Ichchitam akuto bhayam. Yeah. Yoginam nripanirnitam harer namanu kirtanam. Yeah, if you know that your entrance into the spiritual kingdom is guaranteed, you're going to be doubtless and fearless. There's no doubt about it.
As His Holiness Kanana Maharaj said, death is just a change of service. Just a change of service. He said some other things, which anyway, it was just like an extraordinary statement at the very end of his manifest pastimes in this life. It's just a change of service.
Yeah.
That's a statement of fearlessness.
Yeah. And he was also stressing the importance of following regulative principles. Without which your knowledge is always going to be covered to some degree. Because they're principles of cognition.
Yes, this a nice point that's been expanded on by His Grace Ravindra Swarup Prabhu.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Svalpamapsyasya dharmasya trayate mahato bhayat. Yeah.
Now we move on. Next verse. Got a little time here.
And Maharaj says, and that's just from Alpa. In other words, even a little advancement can save a person from the most dangerous type of fear. Hare Krishna.
So, I think Morai Gupta Prabhu generally doesn't read. What about you? Dana, would you like to read the next verse, text 44?
Sure.
Okay.
Epaniva lokeshmin pumsam nihrisyya sodayaha tivrena bhakti yogena manomai arpitam stiram. Translation. Therefore, persons whose minds are fixed on the Lord engage in the intensive practice of devotional service. That is the only means for attainment of the final perfection of life. Purport. Here the words mano mai arpitam, which mean the mind being fixed on me, are significant. One should fix his mind on the lotus feet of Krishna or his incarnation. To be fixed steadily in that freedom is the way of liberation. Ambarisha Maharaj is an example. He fixed his mind on the lotus feet of the Lord. He spoke only on the pastimes of the Lord. He smelled only the flowers and tulsi offered to the Lord. He walked only to the temple of the Lord. He engaged his hands in cleansing the temple. He engaged his tongue in tasting the foodstuff offered to the Lord. And he engaged his ears for hearing the great pastimes of the Lord. In that way, all his senses were engaged. First of all, the mind should be engaged at the lotus feet of the Lord, very steadily and naturally. Because the mind is the master of the senses, when the mind is engaged, all the senses become engaged. That is Bhakti Yoga. Yoga means controlling the senses. The senses cannot be controlled in the proper sense of the term. They are always agitated. This is true also with a child. How long can he be forced to sit down silently? It is not possible. Even Arjuna said, Chanchalam hi mana Krishna. The mind is always agitated. The best course is to fix the mind on the lotus feet of the Lord. Mano mai arpitam stiram. If one seriously engages in Krishna consciousness, that is the highest perfectional stage. All Krishna conscious activities are on the highest perfectional level of human life. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the third canto, 25th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled The Glories of Devotional Service. This is one thing that I really love about this practice, is that it's like, okay, I can't turn off all of my senses and desires and all of that, but it teaches us to turn them to Krishna, to put them in a more useful, put them to better use than what the material world would have us get dragged along through. And so I always try to remember that when I struggle, because it's like, I do struggle, my mind especially, and it helps, either putting on a lecture, chanting, association, any other kind of service, and it really does help. And it's something I have to do like multiple times a day. I can't be just a one and done and then my mind is fixed. I have to keep doing it. And I hope one day it's just like this example in here where it's just there, it's just fixed and it never moves from that spot. But I know that that takes some practice and some work, but I really love that about this practice. It's not just a like renunciation and just be so controlled and turn everything off and not think of anything. It's more, okay, well, that's not going to happen, so let's put it in the right spot. So that's my thoughts when I read this.
Thank you so much. While you were speaking, I was thinking of a purport from the Bhagavad Gita. It's, what is it? What's the number? Second chapter. Prajahati yada kaman sarvan partha manogatan, where Krishna tells Arjuna, when a man gives up all varieties of desire for sense gratification, which arise from mental concoction, and when his mind thus purified finds satisfaction in the self alone, then he is said to be in pure transcendental consciousness. And just like you were saying, that it is rightly said herein that one has to give up all kinds of sense desire manufactured by mental concoction. In other words, the mind just grabs a hold of an idea and starts running with it and starts making stuff up and sending you signals that, yeah, you better do this. You better act on this. This is important. You want this. This is good. And if you let it, it'll carry you away. But then he says, artificially, like you have so rightly said, such sense desires cannot be stopped. But if one is engaged in Krishna consciousness, then automatically, he says, sense desires subside without extraneous efforts. They just go away. And they don't go away by you just sitting there saying, I shall not desire this. I do not desire. I will not do this. I will not act on this. I will not think about this. If somebody tells you, don't think about purple flowers, I'm only going to think about purple flowers. And then he says, therefore, one has to engage himself in Krishna consciousness without hesitation, for this devotional service will instantly help one onto the platform of transcendental consciousness. Instantly. So constant chanting, constant something or other. Otherwise, the mind will find some little chink in your armor and get in there and make you think that all other things are so much more important.
And the example of the child in the purport is perfect, because it's so how my mind can be, where it's like a child having a tantrum sometimes. And I think I remember listening to a lecture where somebody had said they had, taken their child to an event or something at one of their local temples, and he was like, if I didn't have something for them to do, they were just running around, causing a ruckus, and he was like, I had to have something for them to, keep them engaged and keep them focused on. Otherwise, they would go find something to do that they felt was, was worth their time. And obviously it would have been probably not productive or helpful in the situation, but it's exactly how the mind is, or my mind anyways. It's like, what is that saying? I think they talk about boredom, like boredom is the devil's playground or something like that. But I think it's the same thing with a lot of stuff in this material world. Sorry.
Yeah, sending a child for a timeout, sending a child to sit in the corner, sending a child to their room. Torture. It's absolute torture for a child, because they want to engage their senses one way or another, in mischief or otherwise, but to sit idly, practically impossible. I like this other word that Srila Prabhupada used here. He says, he talks about the activities of Maharaj Ambarish, and describes how in this way all his senses were engaged. And then he says, first of all, the mind should be engaged at the lotus feet of the Lord very steadily and naturally. It's something that we may need reminding from time to time. It's actually a natural thing to engage the mind and the senses in the service of the Lord. And that's part of the expression of the superiority of the bhakti yoga process, that the senses don't have to be artificially suppressed, but they have to be properly utilized, that's all. So I thought that was really nice. Steadily and naturally. And that by engaging the mind, all the senses become engaged. Nice. Not that the mind has to be engaged unnaturally. We've reached the end of the 25th chapter. We begin next time with chapter 26, Fundamental Principles of Material Nature.
All right.
So who's going to lead the closing kirtan? Krishna Konteya Prabhu, would you do the honors of leading the closing kirtan?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jayam Vishnupad Brahmsa Parivajakacharya Stota Sata Sri Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Brahmsa Parivajakacharya Astota Sata Sri Srimad His Divine Grace Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Goswami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. ISKCON Founder Savior of the World Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Prem Se Kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Shri Radha Krishna Gopal Gopinath Shamakun Radhakun Giri Govardhana Ki Jai. Sri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Sri Mathura Dham Ki Jai, Sri Navadvip Dham Ki Jai, Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai, Ganga Mai Ki Jai, Yamuna Mai Ki Jai, Tulsi Devi Ki Jai, Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai, Brihad Madanga Ki Jai. All glories to the Son of devotees, all glories to the Son of devotees, all glories to the Son of devotees. Jai Sri Guru and Gauranga, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Das Maharaj Ki Jai.
Jai. Thank you so much, Krishna Kante Prabhu. And Murari Gupta Prabhu says, Jai, thank you, Maharaj, and all assembled devotees. Giri Govardhan ki Jai.
Right.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, everyone, for being here.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you. Thank you, Guru Maharaj. Thank you, Kendra Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Thank you all.
Thank you, Haribol.
Thank
All
you.
right. Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Jayadvaita Swami and friends ki Jai.
Govardhan Hill ki jai.
Yes.
Give your eyes. Maharaj ki jai.
Jai.
Very well.
Hare Krishna.